We do.
We do not.
We do not. Okay. All right. Well, why don't we call the meeting to order? And since we don't have a quorum, we'll go right into the comments from the public on any agenda item that needs to be addressed today. Okay, moving on. Approval of the minutes. We can't do that today because we don't have a quorum. So there'll be no business, no old business. And let's go right on to Coastal Lake Dune Bridges. Lee, do you want to talk about it, or is Brian going to talk to you about it?
Oh, no, this is just really an update.
Okay.
So I just wanted to let you guys know, make you aware that that this is something we've talked about many times, improving the aesthetics of the bridges. I have been, well, first of all, I requested a letter of support from the Friends of Scenic 38 nonprofit organization for getting something done with this, and they did agree to do a letter of support, so that was helpful. And I've been working with Cliff Nauer, who is on the board of that organization, and we've been talking with commissioners about this, and so what we have proposed, and we don't know if this is going to go forward yet or not, and we talked about this in a past meeting as well, the little bridge on Seahorse Circle over in Duneallen that's not on 30A, but it's a smaller bridge. So what we're pursuing approval for is for the county to fund a pilot project to apply these aesthetic improvements to that bridge so that the county commissioners, TDC, the general public can see this and weigh in on, you know, the look of it, and do we want to do this with other bridges going forward or not? And so it's looking, let's say, positive that we may be able to get that pilot done now. And so we're not proposing anything extravagant. It would just be better style of guardrail. What we're looking at, which I'm excited about, if you've seen the guardrails at Pilcher Park, those nice big timber guardrails, I think they're actually beautiful. I love them. We're talking about using those instead of beautiful in comparison to the interstate metal guardrails for sure. Instead of those, doing some staining of the concrete, possibly stamping of the concrete, but that would be hard to do retro. We could do on new bridge replacement projects. And the folks in Public Works, and potentially some low-level minor lighting, landscaping, maybe doing something, treatment on the bridge walls to help bring those aesthetics up. And so Public Works is telling us if we can get this pilot project done pretty quickly and get approval to go forward with the other bridges, they can apply this to the design still. There's time of the big Redfish Lake Bridge that is going to be done this fall. And then there are other bridges in the next couple of years on par to be done right after, or in the next couple of years. So that's exciting. I just wanted to let you guys know that there's possibly some forward momentum there. And I'll hopefully be letting you know at the next meeting what happened with that.
Okay, thank you. Lee, for sale signs.
This is just a mention too. We've had some discussion. We've had some folks come to us in the real estate community in the past about signage as well. For sale signs and for rent signs, clearly we have a whole bunch of them. And so I wanted to bring it up here because I think it is a real destination improvement issue. I think it affects the aesthetics of our communities negatively, all those signs out there. So I've seen some conversation on social media and verbal conversation I've heard about the possibility of going to a system of no real estate signs for sale or for rent even. And, you know, it's kind of, if you eliminate it for everyone, then everyone's on the same playing field. I've also heard some talk about something in between where you would go to a standardized size and look of sign, and you'd have one look for sale and one look for rent, so that people, because a lot of times when I work for Howard Group, and let's say we're courting a potential tenant, a retail tenant, and we'll drive them around the area, and when we get on 30A or Scenic Gulf Drive maybe, they'll get nervous and say, is everything in this place for sale? Is there a mass sell-off? What's going on? Because the for rent signs look like for sale signs. And so it looks like everything is for sale. And we do have a lot of property for sale here, but the for rent signs just make it look like there's even triple what's actually for sale. And so I just wanted the committee to be aware that there is some talk about that happening out there. And I think it might be, if it gets any legs under it, it may be something that we would want to weigh in on from a destination improvement perspective.
Don't we have a county ordinance that prohibits those signs in the county right away on the scenic corridors?
Land Development Code does contain some verbiage about what is appropriate signage on scenic corridors. You know, we have a couple of different scenic corridors that have slightly different signage and advertising requirements.
And you're talking specifically in the right-of-way?
There's also in the Land Development Code about advertising on right-of-ways, yes.
So-
Yeah, but even if you take it off of right-of-way, say on a scenic Gulf Drive or 30A, it's still very visible, even if it's on private property, the signage. And the last thing I'll mention about this that actually caught my attention about it is in the conversations that I've seen, there were actually some realtors expressing support for doing away with the signage altogether. What they are experiencing is in these big master plan communities, they don't allow signage for rent or for sale, but places are renting and selling like crazy in there, probably at an even higher rate than the non-planned communities. And so they're getting that it improves the aesthetics so much that it does help sales and rental. So there were even a couple of realtors that volunteered to work on this as a project. So that made me think, you know, it's not just citizens out there talking about it. We've actually got some realtors saying, you know what, that's a good idea.
There's a lot of money in some of those signs, though.
Yeah. So Lee, is this a industry improvement effort, or is it a citizen request for consideration effort? And will it be a citizens group going to the county with a request for a change to land development codes?
I don't know that yet. As I said, it's very early on. I just wanted to bring it up because I started hearing what I would say is more serious talk about it than I've ever seen before.
Yeah.
So it could even be, I think the highest rate of success would be if it's a combination of both.
Yeah. Obviously, you know, a self-regulation of industry is ideal.
Correct.
I think part of this is probably with the big signs that everybody was complaining about, the big realtor 4x8 signs.
Yes.
So, yeah.
And that's the thing too. Code enforcement is not the issue I'm bringing up. That's being worked on.
Yeah.
But on the signage that is there. But in part of that frustration that was expressed, this other conversation about eliminating the signage altogether came up. And I was surprised to see the number of realtors. Now, I am certain there will be a great deal of resistance from realtors. But I was surprised to see that some realtors were weighing in like this is a good idea. So
This isn't going to push them into the sidewalk hawker sign, is it?
what?
You know, the little Caesar
Oh God!
Great clips.
Live signs,
Huh?
live moving signs.
Yeah.
Well, they're not allowed, so I hope not.
I was in Pensacola one day and I said, "Oh, look at that homeless guy right there playing guitar on the side of the road. Sure is dressed funny, he had a toga on." And then as I pulled into the parking lot, I realized he's actually advertising for Little Caesars.
Homeless.
He was just strumming his guitar.
That's great. Oh Lord.
Okay.
Okay. All right, next issue is Scenic Gulf Drive, and we're going to sort of do this like a question and answer
Sure.
session. I'll ask the question, you give me the answer.
In the hot seat, Bob.
Okay.
In the hot.
The first question I have, and you and I have talked about it in these meetings, is the installation of park benches and trash cans along Scenic Gulf Drive. That is
Yes, sir.
at least a year old.
It is, and we picked out some garbage cans at our last meeting. I'll be honest with you, I have not made the purchase request yet. I believe Josh is assessing areas of need, starting with our regional beach accesses. We did install some down at Pilcher Park. That was previous to the decisions we made at our last meeting. So those garbage cans look a little bit different, but they fit that park.
Okay.
All right. So, I hate to use this as an excuse, but we've been pretty busy. Josh has been very busy with not only his beach maintenance efforts, but also some capital improvement efforts. But you'll see those coming along here before too long.
Can you give me any indication of what the location of these park benches and these trash cans will be?
Of course, like I say, trash cans will be at regional beach accesses. That's going to be at Miramar Beach and at our new one. We're going to find some appropriate places along the multi-use path to build what I call a rest area. So on our new multi-use path we're putting in between 283 and 83, we have two areas that are bump outs in the path. And they'll have a bench on each side. So it's approximately 8 feet by 16 feet. Be a bench on each side perpendicular to the path. Garbage cans, at each corner. And it gives an area for people that want to stop, but they can get off the path so as not to impede traffic on the path. So
Right.
we'll find those down in Scenic Gulf Drive. We've not done that yet, but I'm sure Josh can probably find some time in the near future to maybe meet with you. Or if you have some ideas, you could probably send those to us.
Well, I'm interested in things like numbers. I mean, we've got a 2-mile area along Scenic Gulf Drive, so are we
Right.
talking about 2 park benches, 5 park benches, 10 park benches?
I would say in that 2 miles, we could probably have, 4 rest areas would probably be appropriate if we could find those areas. Because, all that multi-use path is north side of the road. Most of it fronts resort community. There are a few areas where it's business.
There is, on the south side of that multi-path, is right-of-way all along it, at least
It is.
10,
It is.
15 feet of it, so.
Right, but there's
Well, the
also a lot
spaces-
of what I call the 9-unit condominiums or townhouses, and we certainly wouldn't put anything in front of those.
That's all, they're all on the south side.
That's what I'm saying. Maybe you said
Yeah,
on the
we don't
south
want
side,
to be,
there's-
the multi-use path is on the north side of the street, that's where the park benches should be.
and that's where they're going to be. And like I
Right.
say, we'll put a bump out, what I call the rest area, and approximately 3 to 4 places along that 2 miles of stretch of Scenic Gulf Drive.
Yeah, I think we should talk about more,
Okay.
but
Well-
we can talk about that, okay. The next issue that I'd like to know about is the grass maintenance and cleanup contract for Scenic Gulf Drive. We've had this discussion before, that there are many, many places along Scenic Gulf Drive that are not maintained by the contractor because there's an assumption that the property to the north of it is taking care of it. Well, that is not a correct assumption in a lot of places, particularly north of Holiday Drive, where they've just, where the new Alvin's is going to go, and then there's another beach shop just to the east, to the west of that, and then there's another property that's about to develop to the west of that, and nobody is maintaining the right-of-way. Not only that, they're parking all over it, which I thought was also a violation on Scenic Gulf Drive, that you cannot park on the right-of-way.
Yeah. Now, when you say north of Alvin's Island, are you talking about going up the north-south road, or are you talking about in front of Alvin's Island on the Scenic Gulf Drive right-of-way?
I'm talking about the right-of-way on Scenic Gulf
Right.
Drive from Holiday Road to the west.
Yeah. We have just started with the new contractor, but we have the areas identified that are under right-of-way maintenance agreement. In other words, those would be areas that the adjacent property owner is taking care of the right-of-way.
Yeah, but they don't exist. There's only one legal agreement with the county to maintain that right-of-way. Now, you and I had that discussion a year or more ago, that no one has ever signed agreements to take care. A lot of people are doing it because they want the property to look good, but there's a lot of
Right.
people who are not doing it.
Well, I'm going to let Josh respond to this.
Bob, if you will, could you give me a precise location? Because I was out there this morning. This is the second week of the contract, and I must admit it actually looks a lot better than it has in several months. So if you could give me an exact location, send that to me via email, I'll be certain to get with the contractor. We'll look at our plan sheets and make sure we're all on the same
Why
same
why
page.
don't you and I get together, drive that road, and you bring the map?
I can certainly do that, not a problem.
All right, I'll talk to you right after the meeting, okay, Jeff? Thank you. Okay. You and I, Brian, had a discussion about the possibility of taking over the maintenance of the boardwalk, both boardwalks. I know that that's a county issue, but I don't know, after we discussed it, whether or not you've approached the county about the idea of taking that over.
I have not approached the Board of County Commissioners. I have discussions with Public Works, and they do agree that the sidewalk is theirs to maintain. Now, all right, under this new contract agreement, the opposite side of the road from the multi-use path will now be maintained by the same contractor. We will manage that contractor on both sides of the road. The funding for the opposite side of the road of the multi-use path comes from Public Works. All right, so grass will be taken care of on that. Doesn't include the repair and maintenance of boardwalk, sidewalk. But my last discussion with Public Works is, Public Works, do you consider it yours or do you consider it mine? Their answer is, we consider it ours. I said, okay, there are some maintenance issues. I've actually sent my crews down there to take care of some down on the very west end, some glaring issues. But you know, some of the issues that were brought up by a property owner across the road from that boardwalk are really having to do with completely replacing that boardwalk. They just don't like the handrail system.
You're talking about the boardwalk to the west, yeah.
Right.
Right.
West of Miramar Beach to the county line. And, you know, it's not necessarily a deficient boardwalk in construction, it's a deficient boardwalk in design. And so they want that replaced. And, I responded to the lady with, I can't do that. I will come down and take care of some maintenance issues and some grass cutting issues, but I can't agree and I won't agree to replacing that boardwalk.
Well, let me ask you a question about that. I mean, I understand that it's not the TDC's place to do that, but we certainly could initiate that conversation. I mean, Cliff is the guy who built the eastern boardwalk, and he knows exactly what happened. Now, there's distance issues, I know, but why can't this committee and the TDC initiate the conversation with the county to replace that boardwalk?
Well, the simple answer is funding.
Well, I understand that. We don't need to send the county money. We just need to send them.
No, it's funding on their part. When I asked Chance, I said, there's some discussion about changing the boardwalk handrail design, and he said, we don't have the money to do that.
I understand that. What I'm trying to say is the only way he's going to get the money is to have the BCC tell him he's going to get the money. But
Yeah.
how do we initiate the conversation to
We can move it
replace that
forward. I
board?
mean, also we can't do it today, but we can move it forward at our next meeting, or I'll be glad to talk to Chance again and say, hey, Chance, is there any possibility of you or your department requesting, TIF money to replace that boardwalk or to repair the other areas of the sidewalk down there?
Well, okay,
And,
but let me ask this question.
Okay.
If we run this up to TDC flagpole, I'm certain that boardwalk could be considered a tourist destination. So at some point, they could probably come back to TDC and say, give us the money. But the question is, nobody's talking about this. You can't find a piece of paper that talks about the replacement of that boardwalk, and it needs it. So my question is, who, how, and when do we initiate that conversation?
Okay. It can be done by two ways. This committee can make a recommendation to the TDC. TDC can decide how they want to act on that. Either, yes, we agree with that and recommend it to the BCC, or no, we don't agree with it, and, it needs, then, it stops there. The other avenue is a citizen request, which I would recommend to contact the Public Works Engineering Department, Chance Powell, with, Chance, I'm a citizen on Senator Gulf Drive, and I think that Public Works needs to replace this boardwalk.
Okay.
And like I say, if you
So-
would like, I will initiate an email this afternoon to you and to Chance.
All right,
Okay.
and I will go to Chance as the citizen,
Right,
right?
right.
Okay, great.
But like I say, previous conversations have been, yes, it's our,
I've
it's
had
our,
the
it's our
conversation
sidewalk
with him, too.
system.
I mean-
No, we don't have funds right now to improve it because we're doing other things.
But see, I don't accept that kind of an answer from Public Works, because Public Works has no funds. They're given the funds.
Well-
Okay? Yeah, so that's just an answer to
I know, but
tell you to
they-
go away.
They've been working hard on stormwater and road improvements. And
I
so
understand.
sidewalks that exist that are functional in their current form, maybe not aesthetically pleasing, you'd have to understand that, you gotta repair what's broken before you polish what's there.
I understand that. I understand all that. But the point is that once the money begins to flow, all right, the design and the work can be done by outside sources, i.e. Cliff or somebody like that. So I'm not trying to put a burden on Public Works.
No, it's not, I mean,
It's
they
not.
do most of their
It's
work
funded.
through outside sourcing.
All I want to do is get this ball moving so it gets to some point in front of the BCC who says, yeah, okay, we can do that.
10-4. I will initiate email this afternoon to you and a chance, and then I'll let y'all take it from there.
Thank you very much.
You
Okay.
bet.
The last issue is I got a phone call from Amalfi Coast, and I talked to you briefly. The president would just like to have an idea of what's going to happen, and you gave me the information about that property. I'll pass that on. But is there anything else that might be of interest to them as the neighbor?
Yeah, we requested consideration and gained approval to make an offer on the property to the west of the Amalfi Coast property that we purchased earlier in the year. We feel like that sale will go through without any hitches. And so it's a single-family dwelling. How many feet does it add, Jay?
50 feet.
50 feet. The good thing about it is that it has an existing single-family dwelling structure on it. Our plan would be to tear down everything except the structure, the pilings, and probably tear everything down to the top of the pilings. And then we will build the bathhouse on top of that. So we'll have power, sewer, connections, taps, and all that. And we'll have a foundation. It'll be much easier to get permitted and build. And plus, it'll take a little heat off of TDC and BCC of building a bathroom on the piece of land that apparently had some sort of covenants and restrictions that restricted building on it. We're apparently not subject to those covenants and restrictions, but there was still a lot of grief with the Amalfi Coast owners. Plus, it'll add 50 foot of beach out there. So we have not started the conceptual design process. We will here in the near future. We're waiting to see, if this would be approved. It has been approved. We've got to wait for the sale to, transfer of deed. And then we'll do our usual where we engage a engineering firm from our engineering services pool to do a conceptual design. Should be fairly easy if we have a footprint of piles, and from there we'll start the public workshops to take public input.
And it was approved at the BCC meeting
Right,
on Tuesday.
right.
So-
Yes,
I'm
so it
sorry,
was
I
approved to
couldn't hear
purchase. Was when we're making an offer. Was approved to take the seller's offer, or
It was approved, and so the chair signed the contract, and
Yeah.
they're in the process of working out everything now. So, it was approved. So we have a few more steps to go through with the BCC, but, we'll take ownership probably within the next meeting cycle, the BCC meeting cycles.
yeah.
Can you tell me at this point where the stairs to the beach will be along that property?
Once again, there's already a gazebo and a boardwalk there. So we'll have a restroom on the west side of it, and we will probably, once again, conceptual design, is not started, but I would see something similar to what's there now in the center of the piece of property.
So the gazebo will disappear or move?
Gazebo probably won't stay there like it is in its current form. There may be some sort of covered structure, not necessarily an octagonal gazebo.
Yeah, okay.
And of course, we like to make all these regional beach accesses handicap accessible. So you can plan on, our kind of current design theme is to have a central, what I call observation deck at the top of the dune that is the portal to the dune walkover boardwalk, and then a mid-level platform that is typically the switchback on the handicap accessible ramp that's also a little bit oversized to offer another observation area. Boardwalk on down, or a ramp on down to beach level, a set of steps that's integral to this structure, wide, 6 or 8 feet, that gives good access, instead of a 5-foot wide, typical dune walkover. So,
Can you give me any idea when the conceptual design of that might be available?
yeah, the one we did for the Dune Allen Regional Beach Access.
When you get what, sir?
The Dune Allen Regional Beach Access, which is the property we bought in Dune Allen late last year. We've started the design on it. We had a public workshop to present our 3 conceptual designs. One design came to the top. The TDC approved it, the BCC approved it, and now we're off on design development. But I'll be glad to share that with you.
So you think this one will be similar to that one?
I think what
is
you're saying to me is it's going to look like Dune Allen.
It'll look similar to it. The difference is that this one will have right-of-way head-in parking versus a U-shaped pull-in parking.
I'm
And,
essentially just asking that so that the people who live there at Amalfi can see a picture.
But keep in mind, the restroom will be off to the west,
Right.
very west end on what is actually a separate piece of property.
Okay.
And we'll keep whatever structure we have. If there is a covered structure at the center of the property, it'll be a low piling supported hip roof, similar to what we have at Edouard Lane. But it won't be an elevated platform like that. It'll be, if you know the land there, you have the right of way. It drops down into what I call a mid-level, and then there's like a dune. And so we would try to put something in there. Right now the gazebo floor level is approximately the same as the roadway level. I would try to lower that level about 6 feet. And so that your rooftop level would then be, like at car top level.
Okay. Good. Thank you.
But once again, that's all dictated by what FDEP will allow us to do and what our engineers tell us is the best, management practice.
So can I ask a quick question? I know you are yet to have the design done or started, but do you anticipate that restroom that you're going to build on the newer property, assuming that all goes through, would be just connected to that central roofed
It could
area?
be. It could
or could
be.
you have potentially a second walk?
Second
It'll really
walkover.
be pretty much on the parking lot.
So both connected and then have a separate walk.
Definitely
That'd be
connected
nice.
via a sidewalk on the parking lot level, and then possibly connected down in the dune system. However, FDEP has
see.
demonstrated that they want minimal dune walkover, where, I've argued with them that, we're trying to get people on the beach, and and this fits, and we're trying to get handicapped people on the beach. But they don't, they like the minimalist approach in structure size, in, footprint, in length, projection onto the beach, and all that. So it's a big massaging effort.
It's a balancing act.
Yeah.
For sure.
And real quick, Bob, we will have a public workshop, and we'll invite the folks from Amalfi Coast to participate in that process. So that
Okay.
way we make sure we have their input as we move forward.
Good. Thank you. I'll pass that on. Thank you. Next on the schedule is project update.
All righty. Start off my PowerPoint today. Not a whole lot's changed since last time. We're under design development of most of our projects, which include multi-use path, all of our beach accesses, regional beach accesses, neighborhood beach accesses. Our multi-use path from 283 to 83 is about 90% complete. We'll be seeking final approval from BCC here in the near future, which will include going out for bid for construction. We feel like we'll be able to get that portion completed in between November and February. The regional beach accesses and neighborhood beach accesses, our permitting effort has been very laborious and cumbersome. FDEP, instead of letting us do field permits for each individual one, decided it would be an administrative permit for all of them. We've done them in 2 lots, really 4 lots, but we have 2 different engineers working on 2 lots each. So a lot is typically 4 to 5 neighborhood beach accesses and 3 to 4 regional beach accesses. So our thought of being able to do a lot of these this summer has probably gone down to doing, probably less than half of them. I mean, this winter, maybe even a quarter of them, depending on which ones receive permits first and where they are. Obviously we don't want to shut down, all the boardwalks in the Seagrove area to reconstruct them all at one time. And so what we would do is, leapfrog each one. We would do a couple of them at a time or 3 or 4 at a time, but they wouldn't all be adjacent to each other. And then as we get down into the east end of the beach, they're a lot less frequent. So we'll have to figure out what's the optimum way to do it. And of course, some of that's dictated on what we think the construction schedule will actually be. As you know, at all of our neighborhood beach accesses, it's huge logistical issues with material laydown. A lot of them are receiving a fairly good amount of structure replacement, where this was originally a facelift of deck boards and handrails. After we got the assessment back, it seems prudent to replace as much structure as we think is necessary, so that we don't have new on top of old. So that makes it a little bit more difficult with the permitting and, of course, with the construction. Dune Island, I just talked about. We have a couple of pieces of property that we have not started on the conceptual design process. Like I say, the format that we have found works good is go ahead and start a conceptual design and present that as opposed to presenting a blank sheet. Now, when I start that conceptual design, I take of all the information we have, talked about in here, and of course we have a theme we like to follow with our existing regional beach access restrooms. So we're patterning the basic design after our newer ones at Pilcher Park and at Inlet Beach, and Santa Clara is one of them. Those are nice, compact, functional bathroom designs. And of course, as they will fit on the different pieces of property, that will also help dictate how they look, how the parking lot looks. And we try to balance that design with responsible development versus as many parking places as we can get. So, Coastal Dune Lake signs, once again, I apologize, I have not made that purchase yet. If some of you know, we had a little bit of pushback in a TDC meeting and a BCC meeting about the actual proper approval process for that program. We got over that. I just wanted to give it a little bit more quiet time to make sure that opposition had completely gone away, but we'll make those purchases here in the next week or two, and I would estimate a 4-week fabrication time, and if we have, August 15th or so, things will start tapering off with our beach maintenance duties. I mean, right now we're gathering 3,200 bags of garbage. About 3,200 bags of garbage a month. So it's, I'm sorry, a week. And, so a week. So it's, it's, our guys are working hard getting garbage off the beach. As, the rain in June really compounded our efforts because coastal dune lakes are broken out. We have limited access points to get on the beach. It means a lot of going back and forth. And so, this project will have to be done after the heavy tourist season's over. So I think that's about it on the capital improvement projects we have. Like I say, we're also assessing the appropriate number of the garbage cans we picked out. We did get our park benches in for Pilcher Park, so we had a slight issue with procurement of the handicap style picnic table, but I believe those are on their way now, and they'll be installed as soon as they get here. And then we'll work on the rest of our regional beach accesses and get that first wave of public space amenity purchases in place. And so that's it.
Questions, comments?
One comment, and this is just a future, my personal recommendation. That, and I know I'm a little late to the party on some of this, but had some conversations with Cliff about the path, the multi-use paths. This goes for anywhere, but you can prioritize 30A Scenic Gulf Drive. My opinion is that we should always be working toward having those paths on both sides of the road. We've got all this energy around people having to cross the road where the path crosses the road, and ideally, and this would take years and years, and I understand that, but a lot of things take years and years when it comes to infrastructure, and you got to start somewhere. Ideally, we'd have that path on both sides of the road to minimize the need to cross the road. You're never going to completely get rid of it, clearly, but that would really diminish it, and it would also alleviate a lot of path crowding when you've got cyclists and slower cyclists,
right,
not on-street cyclists, and pedestrians passing each other, going both ways. And there are also big safety improvements from having your cyclist traffic going the same direction as your vehicular traffic. So having it on both sides of the road allows that. So I think we should always work toward that. And I heard from when the Western Lake issue came up, there was some concern in the community about if we did a raised bridge, which would preserve the coastal dune lake and not disturb the coastal dune lake, that it would block the view of drivers as they drive across that, of the vistas there. And personally, I'd rather the drivers be keeping their eyes on the road. And I think that that the view from the road and vehicles should be the lowest thing on the priority list, if it's even on it. So I just throw that out there for future. Those are my thoughts, that every single thing that we do, because we are doing a lot of work, thankfully, it's great on that multi-use path. But our goal should be everywhere we can, even if it's little bits at a time, to have that thing on both sides of the road.
When I started here, I figured out that we had a lot of work to do. And so I started on a 5-year capital improvement campaign to fix what we have. And so that's the existing beach accesses in the multi-use path. So we have Western Lake bridges. We have 283 to 83. The next step is 83 to 393. That's going to be a problematic area. Oops, sorry. That's going to be a
Mountain lion caller.
That's a German polka, Tyrrell polka. Anyway, everywhere on 30A, we have right-of-way encroachment, and that's a big thing to tackle. And the other thing that it compounds this is lack of stormwater on 30A. And so Public Works Engineering Department took a mandate from BCC, 3 or 4 years ago, to start figuring out the problems and start designing. So Charlie in Public Works has a lot of stormwater systems designed and sitting on a shelf. And so now they're going through TIF funding to prioritize these, and they will be starting to do them. As you know, some of it will be done with the 30A 395 intersection. Well, you know how bogged down that is right now because of difference in opinion on where things ought to be, decisions that have been made, a connector road that now has a 30A to 395 connector road that is sort of jumbled up the whole moving forward process on that. But so what I'm trying to do is is get the multi-use path into a 10-foot wide ribbon that is safe, includes beautification, which is also hardscape and landscape to keep people out of that area between the road and the multi-use path.
Yes, please.
And so the next section after 83 to 393 will be from 393 to 30A West. And there we have a lot of places where the path jumps back and forth. And I'm not sure what the thought process was when we did it. If it was because in some areas in Dune Allen where you have the flag lots, where you have the house close to the road, if it was because we were going to compromise their driveways, and Allen Lake has a beautiful vista. But we're going to try to get all that path onto the north side of the road. And that'll eliminate a couple of crossovers. Next area, we'll start heading east. We all know that the area from Western Lake Bridges through Watercolor and through Seaside is going to be very tough. But even tougher is the area east of 395, because we have so much right-of-way encroachment that is old. And it's going to take a...
Worst part, it's a mess.
It's going to take...
That is the worst condition of the path.
It is. You have
terrible. That's where I
driveway
live.
cuts.
Holes, big holes.
And you cross over
It
driveway
is.
after driveway.
Like I said, I would have liked to have started there first, but, it was decided that we would start in an area that was easy as opposed to tackling the most difficult one. Because, one thing is it's a cultural change. It's not just
Yep.
fixing a road. You got to take people that have had their stuff in the right of way for 30 years, and you know what kind of belly aching that's going to be.
Yep.
And plus, as we change this multi-use path, we change how they interact with it. And so now most of the driveway cuts cut the path. The path will be one continuous ribbon, and they will have to make a stop. We're correcting sight triangles. We have a lot of places where people simply can't see. They got to pull out into the path. And also that includes signage. You're familiar with our trail etiquette signage and the mileage signs and the stop ahead signs and all that. All that's getting revamped. It'll be similar in design to it. And but it's a long program. By the end of the start of the 2019 season, we should have 10-foot wide path from Watercolor down to 393. And that'll be, what it does too is it starts to help that cultural change. Mm-hmm. People will say, oh man, that's looking good. Mm-hmm. And they'll be more receptive to it in their area, which means that the Board of County Commissioners will be receptive to it because the constituents are receptive to it.
Absolutely. And listen, I'm grateful. That path hadn't been touched in decades.
Yeah.
And so this is great progress. I'm talking more from a long-term planning, perspective. Mm-hmm. You do have to fix what's there and get to a base level of safety and aesthetics and condition and all of that. So I'm very grateful for what's going on. I just thinking with infrastructure, you always have to be planning out, even though you're not addressing those issues today.
Yeah.
And I just, I really hope that in 20 years we have a path on both sides of the road.
Yeah, I'm sure there'll be might not be multi-use path, but I'm sure there'll be some form of pedestrian way.
Some type.
And like I said, I'd say the change in BCC and TDC over the last 5 years has definitely been towards let's fix infrastructure. Mm-hmm. I know some people don't see it, but it's coming. I mean. Once again, as you know, on 30A, if you try to change anything, you're oh my God, you can't do that to me.
Yeah.
I've got a question about the multi-use path. So
Yes, ma'am.
There are no motorized vehicles permitted, correct?
There are no motorized vehicles, so that then goes back to the definition of what is a motorized vehicle.
That's my question. So those
Okay.
motorized bicycles,
They are actually considered a bicycle, so they would be allowed. If you have a bicycle that is motorized and human powered, that is less than 20 miles per hour, and I'm not sure if they measure it in wattage or horsepower, which those can be converted, either way. But if you go to Florida statute, I think I want to say it's 165, but if you just go to the Florida statute and type in motorized bicycles or something like that, it'll come up. Also, if you go to the Land Development Code, there is basically the mirrored Florida statute in there, condensed version of it and put into more easier to read language. But yeah, that came up.
So it's under 20 miles an hour, is that?
Under 20 miles per hour, and it has to be a motorized assisted human powered vehicle.
So
There's
you
just a
can't-
lot of discussion about it right now because there have been a couple local companies, new companies, food delivery companies that have sprouted up, and they're getting some play on the local news channels. And
Yeah.
they're touting that they use these motorized bicycles on the bike path. And
Yep.
they go 20 or 25 miles an hour is
Yeah,
what they're saying, so.
20 miles per hour is the threshold, and the guy that has like the company called Pedigo, okay,
Right.
his advertising is perfectly fits the Florida statute. So the person did their homework,
Right.
and segways are also exempted, so they're allowed on the multi-use path. But looking under Land Development Code, under pathways, multi-use path, and it'll have what's allowed. And then also under Florida statute, they give you more definition of what is a powered
Motorized.
human power motor assisted vehicle.
Gotcha.
Any more comments? from-
Yeah, I've got one more. So I've been talking to Stacy about getting on the agenda for our next meeting in September with
Okay.
an update on South Walton Turtle Watch activity. But just a couple highlights that they've asked me to present today or just mention is that we've got 77 turtle nests in the county
Awesome.
so far this year, so that's good.
Mm-hmm.
But one of the things that has increased is the number of false crawls we're seeing, which means, for those of you that don't know, the turtles that come up on the beach
Mm-hmm.
go up like they're going to lay a nest, but they don't for whatever reasons, and we all know that there are many reasons why that could happen.
Yep.
But one of the things that we've seen along with that when we find these false crawls is a lot of them are bumping into all the beach chair. And I know that might sound like we're making it look that way, but, we've got pictures and we've seen it where they're just,
Yeah.
they go up to the dunes. That's what's natural to them for the most part, unless they're distracted by human activity. But when they go up to the toe of the dune, they run into these big piles of chairs. And
Yeah.
so we're going to do a little presentation
Okay, good.
in September.
At our last BCC meeting, there was some discussion about code revisions and another assurance by the BCC that they would be looking at code revisions earlier
Okay, good.
this year. So they expect us to come to them at the end of the season with all of our data. And we, at that meeting, ought to, think about, between now and then, think about what code revisions we think are appropriate. Because I do use Destination Improvement Committee's input as part of our recommendation, development process. And so, yeah, I think that BCC has demonstrated the last 2 years that they want to do what's fair for all. And yeah, great.
So, Brian, when did you say they're going to consider those code revisions?
Well, they said immediately after the end of the season. All right, so we
When's
know
our next meeting?
September 7th.
September.
So will we meet before?
We'll
Let me answer that.
Okay.
So basically, we've talked with the BCC, and just to go through the process with the committees and the TDC, we'll let these go through the next committee meetings in September, and then we'll bring those forward to the TDC meeting in October, and then we'll bring it to the BCC. So probably about mid-October, end of October, we'll be bringing this to the BCC. That's the goal.
No further comment? Any comments from the public? No comments? Do I hear a motion to adjourn? We don't need a motion.
We don't need,
Adjourn.
appreciate y'all's time today.
All right, thanks.
Thank you.